Hey, greetings, fellow slinging agents in the wild. It's your trusted handler, Brian, welcoming you once again to the show. I have before us, queued up and ready to go, the final episode of our Collateral Damage scenario, the After Actions Report. So, like I wanted to remind everybody that between the end of this season to the next season, there will be a little bit of a hiatus as we let some of these episodes stew together. But don't worry, we already have the next season ready. It will be the Deep Waters Disavowed, where I run a few of the agents that didn't get an opportunity to go through the first Deep Waters. They wanted an opportunity to go through it. So Sam and Tone will get that opportunity, and I think it actually turned out really well. I already have it all locked and loaded and ready to exploded. Give you a little bit of a rhyme there. Anyways, so I don't want to take up too much of our time. So why don't we just warm up our dice and top off our glasses. Roll the Hard 20 presents episode 14 of our Collateral Damage run through the After Action Report. Have a good time. See you next season. Good news. I love it. Get it. Go on, Flash. Get on, Flash. Come on, go get a Flash. So, hang on, I gotta find it. So I took Allie to the bookstore today, and I was thinking that I wanted to text or message this one guy, Chris Gonerman. He's the guy that created the Basic Fantasy RPG, the whole genre or whatever. I said, hello, Chris. I'm the showrunner for Roll the Hard 20 podcast, and we'll be running Basic Fantasy RPG for our 16th season. I just want to see if you had any reservations or if you're good with this. Thank you, Brian. And then he's like, I'm not aware of any reason why this would be a problem. Can you give me more of a rundown what you plan on doing? And so I told him that, we'll be using the RPG rule set to run other hosts. Or I would be using it to run the other hosts of the show through a homebrew scenario campaign and release the episodes weekly. As a longtime D&D player, I can't express my disgust with the current state of their practices. Having played Basic Fantasy RPG in the past with a few other players, which is you, Sam and Tone, we have all enjoyed the old school feel that you've managed to capture. As we are all in our 50s, we can appreciate the endeavor with which you've created this. However, if it's your wish that we don't use your system, please feel free to let me know. No hard feelings. He's like, no, you misunderstand. Not looking to stop you, rather interested in partnering with you.
Oh, here we go.
So then we started going back and forth with all this stuff. Long story short, expect your books in the mail of 4th edition.
Oh.
So he'll be sending you guys the 4th edition books, which we have to be using for that. He wants me to finish up the campaign and change it over. So I said I was going to be doing that and then send him a copy of that.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not going to be 3rd edition then, right?
No, we're going to move up to 4th edition, which is basically the same thing, except for they removed anything that had to do with the open gaming license. So they wouldn't run into problems with WotC. So if this works out well, he doesn't make hardly any money on the system anyways. And I don't expect us to, other than maybe get more followers, and we'll be able to have another venue to post our show through. So,
yeah. And he said he wanted your campaign?
Well, he was curious about it because he would like to put it up on the site. So cool. Like if other people want to run the campaign too. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old campaign. Junior went through it, but I don't know if he remembers any of it, and that's fine if he doesn't. But like I said, other than the fact that I'll have to change some of the NPCs and some of the monsters over to curb, to make it on his stuff, like through the field guide and the core book and shit like that. Other than that, the scenario is the scenario. It doesn't change. So
nice.
Right on.
Yeah. So that sounds cool. Sounds like it might.
Not all over 50.
No,
we're all over.
But 50. I said that we
can
had
make
all
you
been,
an honorary grumpy old man. There are.
Yeah, I told him, we've all been playing D&D since like 85 or earlier.
When you were born, Junior.
Yeah,
One,
88.
I said, but one of ours started in like 2017, and he's been with the show since. And he's very knowledgeable. And he's like, "Well, where are you guys at?" So that I understand the demographics. I said, "Well, we're all over. I'm in Florida. I got somebody in Colorado, 2 people in California, and 1 in Texas." And then that's why I said we'd been gaming for years and stuff and that. So first he said, "Yeah, give me the addresses and I'll just send them out books." I said, "No, well, I'll just have the guys pull down the PDF." He's like, "No, I appreciate that, but I want to send you guys books." I said, "Here's the addresses."
They're collecting dust.
Yeah, right.
Got copies
hey,
right here.
Tax
if,
donations.
if we could help each other scratch each other's back on this,
Hell yeah.
that'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we've all played the system and we all think it's really good. So,
No, it's pitching.
so
Maybe if you send them your homebrew, we can do some I can do some art. I'm thinking like I'm still at a company. Could do some artwork for it for like a cover or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, you could put together like the actual blood vault itself, which is just like these 4 pylons that have these elemental nodes on them. Like one has earth, wind, fire, and water. That's what the thing is. It's like I kind of fashioned it a little bit after the Temple of Elemental Evil, where you had those different nodes and shit like that. Only it's not. You're actually going out in the world to locate these nodes. And you find out that one of them had recently been stolen. They had one of them. And that was what was keeping this barrier set to keep what had been locked away behind this thing. And it takes place in an era where like magic is frowned upon, and you don't see any clerics. Now that doesn't mean that they don't exist. They do, but they think that because of what had happened with all these magic users and how they almost brought about the end of the world, they're looked upon with derision, and they think clerics have the same kind of power. So like, oh, fuck you too, But now that's starting to come back into the world again. So,
Right on. That's bitching, dude.
well, let me ring us in and say hello to everybody. How's everybody doing?
We're doing good.
Doing well. Had a long talk with Tony last night.
It
Sorry.
wasn't that long.
Are you yelling at me? Is that your passive way of yelling at me that I didn't get up? I tried to get home from that hillbilly redneck birthday party. I sent you pictures, videos, no doubt.
Well, it seems like you sound guilty about it. I actually just was saying I had a long call with Tony.
I feel guilty about it because by the time I got home and I wanted to get on, I was just, honestly, I was so tired, man. I was just beat. But I got up early. You should have jumped on with me then.
Yeah, I was up.
Yeah.
You didn't call.
I yelled. You didn't hear me?
Yeah.
I yelled. You didn't hear me across 3 states?
I posted the show.
I did watch it. I got to catch up on that. That was good.
Which one?
The latest episode, the first episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Had one of our writers write in on YouTube. He's like, "Hey guys, I missed you." I'm like, "Aye, we're back." Well, let me lead us in and we'll explain some of that. Greetings, fellow slingers. Welcome back to Roll Hard 20 podcast. It is I, your trusted handler, Brian, and with me, my hard slingers of yore.
Hail.
Yeah.
Episode 13 of our Collateral Damage homebrew Delta Green scenario, our after action report. So, as I just explained, actually, this isn't what I just explained. This is something else.
Let me sum up.
Yeah, let me. So I actually had a few listeners write in during our posting of our Lot 27 episodes, and they expressed how they missed Junior and Chris while we ran that. This season, we obviously corrected that. This season, we had the entire roster of our hard slingers of yore. And the way the story of Collateral Damage first came about was the agents were going to investigate several suicides in DC that had an unusual feeling or unusual ambiance about them. And I think we kind of hinted at that towards the end of Lot 27, that Heisenberg was keeping an eye on something like that. Now, originally, this season was just going to be another 2-agent milk run. And if any Delta Green scenario could be called a milk run, it really shouldn't be. But I originally had a story that was much larger in scope that I truncated to allow the 2 agents to go through. However, when Chris and Junior expressed that they wanted to be part of it, it allowed me to open that story back up and put back in what I had taken out, which was the murder of the prostitutes, which would have been great as like a big thing, but I thought it would have run you, Sam and Tony, I thought it would have run you guys through too many steps to try to get from point A to point B. Unfortunately, the season did go longer than I wanted it to, but not because of the episodes, but because of the time. Because we had illnesses and holidays and people traveling around for business and whatnot. But I think, like, if we think about it, tonight is like episode 13. That's, what, 3 months? A little over, no, yeah, 3 months. So, I guess that was long, maybe? I don't know. Anyways.
It does feel long to me.
Well, whatever the case may be, let's talk about Collateral Damage. So, your initial thoughts on it before we start going in and breaking down the story, because I want you guys to interact with me as I go through and go through the scenario of this whole thing. So,
We'll ask some questions.
all right. I did say, what was your initial take of Collateral Damage? What did you guys take away from it? Give me that first of all. We'll start with you, Junior. You're quiet down there. I know your dog's going to start barking, so I might as well get you before you mute.
Yeah.
Flash!
I thought it was great. I thought straight out the gate, having us all meet up at the airport the way we did and address each other through our code names. I thought that was a good start for, especially since we haven't seen each other in a while. Overall, I mean, I didn't know if what we were going through at first actually did link up, where, you know, Sammy and Tone went off to their area and we went to ours, where if these two items actually did relate. Honestly, I kind of thought you sent us somewhere that would link to something else, so that threw me into a twist. So I actually did enjoy it a lot.
That's good. Thank you. I appreciate that. You get a gold balloon. No.
Right.
Tone, give me yours.
I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really good because it was a logical progression. You know, everything led up to everything else and it made sense. I like the way you laid the foundation for each one of the steps. Like, okay, you got the dollar bills, and that traces back to the teller, and that traced to the bank, and then the bank led us back to the boat where the teller was, and then talked to him, and he was like, "Hey, how you doing?" I like the way you tied it into Eugene the Wise, but I would have liked to have him done more. I liked his.
Well, maybe you should
shot
have
him
fucking
then.
killed him.
Yeah.
I had no choice. He was going to touch each. I told him to sit down. He didn't. Guess what? Game over.
It's tough
for him
dealing with
anyway.
the jealous agent, you know?
Your partner.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I know how these things go. It's like, it's not just simply he touches you. It's he touches you, it grabs on, and continues to do damage over a period of time. Oh, and then when you die, some egg hatches inside you, explodes your body, and you have two enemies to fight now. So I was like, oh, no. I'm going to shortcut this right here. You need to sit down. You're not going to sit down? Okay. You're going to sit down now because you ain't got no choice.
Well,
Now you're going to sit down in two halves.
I'll get into Eugene as we break this whole thing down about where I was going to go with that also. Sam, what did you feel about all this whole thing? Because you did a lot of heavy role playing, and I thought that was really well done on your end.
Well, what I like about these settings are, to me, they're all, you know, exotic locations. I've never been to DC and all that. So I like that everything is the, Ronald Reagan Airport. You got to fly in there, and then you got to go here. What I like, though, about, you know, maybe it's just the homebrews, or, you know, I can't remember if the existing ones are like this. It all seems very self-contained. Like Lot 27 was great because it all happened in one thing. while ours was more separated before with the two groups of agents, each of our areas seemed very still contained. Like I like it. Like there were great like sets. Like for Junior and Weavers, they had the old, Cabrini Green building with, the gang members in there, and that had a really
Yeah.
good feel to it. Ours had, going to these different apartments and seeing these different lives that all ended the same way. But it's like, well, one guy is kind of a neat freak, and one guy is kind of white trash, and then one, I don't think we got to go to the lady's house that killed herself either, right? We only got to
No,
go to
you
two, I
you
think,
didn't.
right?
You had the opportunity if you wanted to go to Virginia and go see her house. That was all.
Yeah.
That was in the AP. So
Well,
you could have gone to anybody's house, and I had already had that. So if you're like, hey, I want to go here, and I would have pulled it up on Roll20 for you too.
the I'm actually glad we didn't, because that would have made things take longer, and we already got what we needed. They had the bills. Like Heisenberg was pretty clear with his direction. We get the bills, find out who made them, debrief them, and then, basically blast them in half with a Hellfire shotgun round on a boat. Those were what he said. So, but yeah,
Verbatim.
yeah, yeah. You didn't double tap Adesso. um, but yeah, I really liked the two distinct sort of feelings for each of our groups. Ours was in like business areas, and it was kind of clean, and it was like suburbs, and then Junior and Weaver were in like, inner city with gangs and stuff like that. And then it all sort of met together when we were at the motel, and Weaver got gacked out on some devil's talcum powder or whatever it was that he took.
You,
Did we ever roll to find out exactly what he took, or did he say?
no, he just took some kind of like a methamphetamine of some adjustable, whatever that's really going to amp his ass up.
The funny thing was, it was just a placebo. It was baby aspirin, but he thought he was taking
It
some.
was a Tic Tac.
Yeah,
It was all crushed up for him.
Well, as I start going through and breaking down the story, just chime in with whatever you guys want to. Also, as I start leading in, or if I take a pause to let you guys let this thing breathe for you. But as you know, the agents got their call from Heisenberg to get to DC, where several suicides had a very suspicious air to them. So much so that Detective Ramsey, the lead detective, asked the FBI to send some profilers to take a look. That's what brought the four of you to the DC Metro PD, was to assist as profilers for these suicides. After Ramsey had filled in the team, another detective, Tom Haynes, with whom Ramsey had been comparing notes due to the similarities in the method of 3 murders that Haynes was working on, was trying to see if there was some kind of connection between his murders and the suicides. Haynes had asked to talk to 2 of the agents, which were Coldwell and Rice, and see if he could get their eyes on that. And that's what actually started to separate both teams. The split of the agents into 2 teams, each in Adesso. We're starting to look into the suicides with Ramsey, Coldwell, Rice, Haynes, heading over to the latest crime scene. So let's talk about the 2 detectives. Now, we had Ramsey and Haynes, and I know that Chris had already expressed what he thought about Haynes during one of the episodes. But Junior, you worked directly with him. What was your take with Haynes?
I thought Haynes was. I honestly didn't. Hold on, you might have to cut this out because I don't remember exactly how Haynes was. Like
He was
I
like
didn't really.
he was in his early 60s, kind of
The old
frail-looking
disheveled guy,
older
right?
man. Yeah, kind of disheveled. Looked tired beyond belief. Looked like probably
Okay.
the last thing he wanted to do was have this thing dumped on him.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, when we first met Haynes, he just seemed kind of worn off. This is kind of like what I was saying earlier, where I just because we passed that check, I wasn't sure if it was something that we should have been following, just because of the way you kind of like brought him up. I mean, he's asking for help on a case that he, like most of his colleagues, felt that it was way over his head on. and now he's kind of grasping at straws, trying to connect certain things with whatnot. And I mean, we went with the flow to just, if we're there and we're having our case, there is a possibility that there's other stuff going on, especially with the body count that they've found. So that's why we ended up going with him, just to tag along and see if there is any relevance between it.
Yeah, and I think that as you guys started delving into it, I know that as players you can see what the other players are doing. As characters, you don't know. But you as a player could start seeing that when you got on the first murder, or it was a third murder, but the first one you had seen of the one prostitute, the way her neck had been cut on both sides, that definitely could tell you as a player that perhaps both sides of these things actually do have a similarity. Maybe they are somewhat connected.
Yeah, as a player, I totally saw that, but as in character, because we separated almost at the go.
Right.
We were collecting data as we went, and we were still waiting to brief each other later on. So during those few steps, as in character, he had no clue if this stuff even linked. Yeah, I was suspicious of the lacerations that the victim had on their neck, but we had no clue what was actually going on with the other suicides or alleged suicides.
And I liked how you did a lot of checks with the body too, and around the area, and then as you were going through it. Tone, what was your thought on Ramsey?
I liked Ramsey. I thought we could have brought him into the Delta Green fold, but towards the end, it didn't work out the way that I thought it would. So he was resistant to it, didn't seem to be able to wrap his mind around the fantastic. We soft pedaled it, right, Sammy? We were trying to get him in and just
stories?
didn't work out.
You ever heard of Loch Ness Monster?
Yeah.
Bigfoot!
I got one of them.
Yeah, maybe it could have gone a little bit better, but it is what it is. And so he didn't come in, but I thought he would have been a good addition, like him and Makamura. It could have been a chance for a reoccurring role for him, but apparently I wasn't as persuasive as I would have liked.
Well, maybe you might have been like too into your character as you were on your near-death experience, but I think Sam, you probably picked up that he might have been more helpful later on down the line, especially towards the end, right?
Yeah, our last conversation with him, I think, leaves it open because he was immediately onto something with the bills, and I like it when these people we meet are not like the Tom Hanks guy, or sorry, Tom Haynes, where they're just like these kind of disheveled lost guys, or like some of the other NPCs we meet from the other things. He seemed like he was kind of affected by it, but not in a fearful or lost or hopeless way. Like he was like, there's something about these things, and I really liked that. I also thought the TSA agent Dalton, I thought would have been good because he got that he was in contact with the money and kind of broke, and we saved him from killing himself. But at the end, he couldn't handle it. He just skulked off, tail between his legs.
Well, when we get to the medical examiner's office, which is coming up shortly anyways, we'll delve into him and Dr. Lotta and the deviation there as well. But moving on from the Metro PD, Coldwell and Rice went to the Potomac Gardens apartments to go investigate the latest murder. But each and Adesso went to victim one's apartment, which is Marlo Griffin. And you guys were doing a really good job of not just measuring dicks, but actually going through and checking things out. And it's kind of funny because this was the episode where I think that we didn't have either Chris or Junior, so we ran it without them. Remember, we ended up recording this episode solo. And then we picked up their episode, I think, in the middle of the week. And then we picked up everybody for the fourth episode on the weekend.
I remember I was a guest on one of them for like a little bit.
Yeah, you jumped on. You jumped on for a quick
because
chat.
they were like, "You want to hang on?" I was like, "No," because I don't know what's going on their end. So
yeah, and that's really cool because, like, as you guys are listening as the other players do their thing, and you're not supposed to know what's going on, but yet you do. So some of the things that they've actually discovered at the first victim's apartment, if you guys want to go over that with him, he doesn't even know, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, just like you guys don't know what it was like when they were doing their investigation the first time, and they met with, I don't know if you guys were there.
Holy
you were
Boy?
there when he met Holy Boy, because I remember you guys made me bleep
Good
a
thing
lot of that
Odessa
stuff out.
wasn't there. He would have just lit him up right there. Boom.
But what was your take when you guys got to Marlo Griffin's apartment? Because Tone, you were like running that thing full on, like trying to figure out where he was at, and Sam was going around checking out where the body was at, and you guys started going through his clothes and just picking apart stuff left and right.
My thought was we were going to encounter him there. And
The dead guy that just killed himself?
No,
Dead
not
don't
Marlo.
mean dead in this game.
I was thinking that there was going to be something else other than just a dead body. I was thinking there was going to be something. I figured you were going to spring on us another encounter. Where we
Another
were gonna have to
globule?
start pulling triggers, getting kinetic.
Guy's still shell shocked from the proto matter.
Yeah.
Well, that was my thought process on it. Right here, we are going to go in, and we got all this cool, all these cool weapons now. I'm thinking, yeah, this is where we're going to use them. It's like, nope, no close, not even close.
Well, I want to make sure you guys had your investigative chops about you first, so you could start connecting the dots, start moving your pieces down range, and as the board starts to eliminate suspects or starts to gain suspects, I wanted to see how you guys were going to be going through that and everything. When you guys, Junior, when you and Weaver eventually made your way to the Potomac Garden Apartments, you got there with Detective Haynes and began to process this crime scene. Like I said, I actually thought you guys did a really good job of doing that, how you went through, checked out the body and whatnot. But
Got down to some real CSI shit right there.
yeah, I mean, that's when you physically saw the cuts on her neck, and you knew that that's probably what brought Haynes to Ramsey, so he could start comparing this stuff. Each in Odessa, when they made their way to the medical examiner's office, Dr. Dwayne Latta, who you met for the first time, as well as Treasury Enforcement Agent William Dalton, who was there to inspect the bills for being suspect, because they were at each one of the crime scenes. So that's when I want to talk about the medical examiner's office. Because you had Latta, Dalton, Ramsey, and both of you guys in this room. And Dalton went to go look at the money and started pulling the money out when he started getting the texts. And now, from my perspective, either one of those individuals would have either helped or had killed themselves. It was a matter of who could you save and who was salvageable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And either one of them was gonna make it. So
Yeah, I didn't think about this until later. I wasn't worried about the doctor, not thinking that he'd probably looked at the stuff too, but this guy had just been looking at the stuff and then got a phone call. And I don't remember if we knew about the text yet. I think we did at the first victim, but I didn't put that together. He was talking to his girlfriend.
he was
And I'm
texting her.
He
He wasn't on the phone. He got a text from his ex-wife
Yeah.
after he had looked at the first bill.
Yeah. But I was thinking like, well, this guy's he's gonna break. And I didn't think that even the doctor, I wasn't even thinking about the doctor, about him breaking. We probably could have saved both. But when the guy had, this guy's an armed guy, the doctor, scalpel, okay, we'll take him out if we need to. But an armed guy, he's going to kill himself a lot easier. But then it also worked out for the better having the doctor kill himself, because that's one more loose end
Yeah, and
that we don't have to clean up. I mean, and we got all the bills that were currently available in one swoop. It was awesome.
And I tried to play the doctor like he wasn't there, like he was spaced out. Something else was on his mind.
I thought he was just overworked and from all the bodies and shit like that.
No, he was wrestling with all that. all that shit that was going on, because he had seen each one of the dollar bills. He hadn't cleaned them, but some of them were enough for him to kind of make out what was going on.
Well, we did have, I think, Adesso, you were watching him, right? And I was watching the agent, and then he pulled the gun, and I'm like, Adesso, gun! And so when you left to come help me secure that, that's when the doctor fucking enlightened himself.
Yeah, he was in the restroom and
Yeah.
took himself out.
Yeah.
Were you there during that episode, Junior?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think this is part of, because this sounds familiar.
So when Coldwell and Rice went up to the 5th floor to meet with Holy Boy, the door was answered by Darius, a tall man with dreadlocks and an eye patch. Tell me about your encounter with Holy Boy and his entourage.
I think what Chris and I were trying to do, or our characters were actually trying to do, was just kind of get a feel for Holy Boy, because these were his prostitutes. So we didn't understand why it would benefit him to have this. We wanted to figure out if he had some rival, turf war between another rival gang, or, something about, girls. Maybe there's a problem and those girls were from another pimp or something like that, but we needed to find out more about him. When we got there, we definitely did not want to start anything. We were outmanned, and we were in an area where, like, every time you describe the place, I always imagine like one of these movies that, back in like Queens, like every floor is like watched, protected by, some kind of, gang or drug, operation.
That's what I was trying to get across, too. I just wanted you to feel like every floor you went up, that this could be it. Like, is it going to go down just getting to this guy's apartment? And there was a time that I was concerned that Chris was going to do something that was going to end your guys' career in that episode. I was like,
and this is the one you were worried about? I was more worried about when he was all hopped up.
I like that mechanic where you had the eye patch turn into that, or he opens his eye patch and it's like the same thing that you would see if you looked at the bill. I thought that was pretty clever.
on the eyeball, yeah. Thank you, brother.
20-sided dice.
I appreciate that, brother. Yeah,
I like that. I was like, oh man, draw a bead on him. Oh shit, you can't look at it. That was pretty good.
Anybody conversing with him automatically sees it and has to make that sanity check. That was
Yeah.
But like there was a little bit of a twist to find out that Holy Boy was actually Baker's CI.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things.
That was
where,
a twist.
So he wouldn't have done it. In fact, he had this tough attitude, but really he was just trying to keep his street cred going, because any weakness would be it.
I think I mentioned that in one of the episodes. He had that he had to, maintain his reputation. So obviously he was going to, diss us off and pretty much tell us what we already knew, which was going to be nothing. But we wanted to get our own feel off this guy. And
the whole time you've got these peripheral people like Grizzly and Half Tank and Darius.
Yeah, love the names.
Yeah, they're like all off to the side, but you're only dealing with Holy Boy. You're not dealing with those other people. Yet.
Our main focus was just dealing with the head honcho at that point.
And that's why I wanted that to kind of get across, that it's the peripheral guy that's doing all this shit. But you didn't know, and I thought that was really good. But when you guys left the ME's office, Sam and Tone, you got a call from Ramsey after you checked in with Heisenberg to get down to the DC memorial. So you guys get there and you find out that there's actually a victim 0 that survived this shit.
Yeah.
And after talking with him in his room, you find out 2 things. One, that not only did he survive, but one, that he had gone to the bank and spoke to a teller that day just prior to him doing all this stuff. And then also that you found out where he was at, where he lived. And then that made you guys go to his flat, his apartment, and start delving around in there. And you guys found two $10 bills. One of them had blood on it, and I think one of them did not, as well as fed the cat.
That's right. Well, that's some of the things I like about, not so much about just this game, but the role playing that it allows us. Because there is such a slower pace, because you're investigating, you're doing this, it really allows time for character moments to come out. Like, you know, each is taking care of this guy's cat. In the old episodes, each is wiping off this guy's pictures of dust from his family because he knows the family's coming to get the body. Like
back.
He has a kind of an affinity for things like that, you know. And I really like when there's moments to role play subtle things where, like, if everyone listened to our Bloodlords when I played Khan, it was easy to role play because he was just an out of control, you know, skullcracker, right? Just it's easy to be the crazy guy, but to be able to have moments where you can role play, you know, not tender moments, not trying to sound too soft there, but things like, yeah, don't worry, man. You know, you survived it. Your cat, will take care of your cat. Thanks for letting us go over and check out your place. You know, I like.
Do you think he does that stuff, like cleans up and messes with the cat or gets the coffee and stuff, as a way of penitence for all the stuff that he had done prior to this life? Like
I don't
trying
think
to compensate in the other direction, maybe.
No, I think it's more of about being like that kind of stuff that deals with the family, you know, taking care of a pet or cleaning the pictures so the daughter doesn't see it. You know, Ichi has a family that he hasn't seen. Well, we don't want to ruin too much, but hasn't seen in a while.
Actually,
oh, they would have heard it already, right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So each has been on purpose away from his family because this lifestyle that he's in is too dangerous. They've already, you know, each in Odessa were already marked men for a long time, and instead of reuniting with my family like Odessa did, each just kind of left it. And anyways, that family was a secondary family, like a surrogate family to his original one, his clan. He was, you know, born Yakuza, and when that clan got wiped out, he tried to fill the void with a new family, and he did, but it's not the same. So that's why each has been going back to, when he distanced himself from his family, now he's returning to his old ways. And, you know, that's the life of a, you know, Yakuza crime thing, you know, illicit business. But he does it. Makamura is joining us tonight. We missed you on this mission.
Well, thank you,
Special
H. I
guest.
don't want to be here for you.
Oh, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Makamura.
Wait,
The Irish.
what the hell that tastes?
But yeah, like, so he's really gone back to sort of that lifestyle, but still he has a bit more of the humanity that new lifestyle brought to him. So he still tries to honor family, honor elders. You know, even at the end of this one where he was confronting Heisenberg, he says, like, I'll never be a problem to you. You want it to end right now? I'll take care of it right now. And, you know, he patted his Tonto.
Now, damn
Like,
it,
he
Each.
still has that.
Calm down. Take it easy.
That's just like, if you break up with me, I'm going to kill myself. You know, like.
And meanwhile, the husband's like, damn it, how am I supposed to go get a beer with the guys? Look, just calm down, you know?
Yeah.
I gotta get out of here.
The words you never want to hear. I'm pregnant. You're the father, and I'm going to kill all three of us. You know.
So you're having twins?
Oh, that's good.
But yeah,
He
that
was never good at math.
Not to dive away from the mission or the AAP part, but I like the elements that allow for role playing, and it doesn't feel bad.
What about you, Tone?
I keep thinking that
We were in the
Odessa was
apartment,
probably be ready to retire at this point from Delta Green because two near-death experiences. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'm still going through it in my head because I like the character. He's fun to play. He's quick on the trigger and very cold-hearted.
Yeah, and Tony's scratching his neck with a knife right now, so we know that sanity points are getting lost.
He is in character. I mean, when he rolls sandy damage, he, as a player, takes it.
Yeah.
So, after you guys left Victim Zero's house, and you guys went to reconvene with the other agents at the American Suites motel. You guys all sat down, shared notes, found out that, hey, maybe there is something that's connecting both sides of these investigations. Tone, Adesso decided he was going to do something strange while Rice tried to isolate where that text was coming from via his computer. But you were, as Adesso was going, you were going to do something unusual.
Oh, is this when we got the fifth wheel?
Well, this is when he decided to chain himself up and look at the bill. I got to know your motivation behind that, and then we'll talk about the fifth wheel.
Well, my thought would be that it was the the symbols, the language, something about the bill made it activate, and all you had to do was read it, so that there was inherent power in the symbols. And what he wanted to know, what Odessa wanted to know was, if it's ACLO, can I read it? Is it the combination of what's there, or each individual symbol creating power on their own? Is it a combination of all of it? His motivation was to get a deeper understanding of the language, because his premise was, it's ACLO, it's got to be. Why I thought that? Because it makes the most sense.
Real quick, for listeners new, what is ACLO, handler, or tone, for the people who don't know?
Handler?
ACLO is an ancient language that has an unnatural connotation to it, that if you don't know how to read it, or you attempt to read it, you will go insane. It's practiced by the initiates of a very high source.
The Aclolites.
Yeah. That's why you drink Gatorade, so you can keep your acolytes in check there.
My Aclolites are low.
So Adesso's premise was, it must be ACLO. People who are looking at it are going insane. So if I look at it and I can read it, or I look at it and I can get a better understanding of the language, whether or not it's a message in the whole or each symbol is doing something, it was just a quest for knowledge. That's what it was. He wanted to understand.
And you're the only one that can read it out of our group.
Yeah.
But you don't have to read the symbol to be affected by it.
Right.
It was the symbol itself and what it conjured up in your psyche.
We didn't know, though, because no one could look at it.
Yes, that's true.
Someone had to look.
Well, even though he thought he could read it and he decided to take the chance of it, it was the symbol that eventually, even though he succeeded in passing the sanity, all that meant was that he became aggressive. If you fail, you become suicidal. And that's just, it's one of those things where...
And if you succeed, you're homicidal.
Yeah.
Right? It's
if you succeed, you want to kill somebody. If you fail, you're suicidal.
I'm like that too, with a couple bottles of Jim Beam or something like that. It's like, it's always that way. Never suicidal.
And it's irregardless of who looks at it. And that's what the inherent danger is. Because I don't want you to think that you could just overcome something like this that's just going around taking people out. But it was why it was happening, which we got into towards the end of the AP itself as you started going through it and everything. And that's where we're going to get into what this was all about, because even though you guys know a little bit, I never explained it in the AP because it's things that go on behind the scenes and how the story gets built. But each you managed to choke him out, put him to sleep. And then
that's just position number one we normally use.
Yeah. Then the fifth will show up.
He's got insomnia.
Martin down at the front desk.
Martin.
Yeah. The next morning, everybody woke up, some a little more worse for wear than others. Now, Adesso and each were going into the PD station to let them know that they had some leads that they were going to follow up on, which was the bank. But Coldwell and Rice were going into the station because they had got a call from Detective Baker, I believe, that somebody had phoned into the PD letting you guys know that this particular individual may know who the murderer is of these prostitutes. And when you guys got in, she called again, and you found out that this woman was telling you, by the way, her name was Mama Fontenot, Mama Lacey Fontenot, that she believed that this individual was actually her son, Darius Fontenot. And Junior, you immediately picked up on who this cat was.
Hell yeah.
Getting into character with me.
Sorry, in character. Yeah, no, it definitely connected the dots. And I mean, the whole thing is going back to the Potomac Gardens. I mean, that, like we said earlier, that was just a hellhole to try to even get in, you know? Now we have to go back in with force and knowledge that we know that Darius is involved. You know we might not make it out of this place alive.
Yeah, and that was the nexus, because when you looked at the map on Roll 20, where all the bodies had been found of those women, were all around that major block.
Yeah.
And that was the nexus of this. And then when you get there, of course, you enter Holy Boy's apartment, and all you find are a bunch of headless bodies. You find Holy Boy's body, Detective Haynes, who went there for some reason, he's headless, and all the partiers from the previous night. But you don't see Darius, you don't see Grizzly or Halftang. They're gone. And at that point, Baker made a call, found out he was actually living one floor above. And as we made the transition to go up that way, we followed Each and Adesso as they were making their way to the bank. They went to the bank. They spoke with the manager, Eli Baum, found out that Eugene had called in that day. But through persuasion, you guys got his name, Eugene Abernathy, where he lived, and he even let you go through his till as being a teller at the bank. And it was there you found 3 more suspect $10 bills, which you collected. On your way to go to where he lived, you were given the opportunity to hit up a green box, which you immediately detoured towards. You guys got some goodies from the green box.
Yeah. Stuff we never got to try out. I'm still curious, but I think they may have a role in the future.
Well, Each got himself a jack blade.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Now, do you want to explain that too, Ryder, in case some people don't remember?
Yeah, let me see if I could.
You have a good description of it. I like how you describe it.
The best way I could explain it is imagine a katana handle. It's a little shorter than 10 inches. It's probably about 8 inches long. It's hiltless. Size. It doesn't have a tetsuba on it, so there's no hilt. And there's a trigger on it on the dorsal side where it covers 2 fingers. And when you squeeze it, trigger it once, there's a battery in there that channels a positive magnetic charge, and this blade starts to segment out. I believe I said that there were 4 segments, and they all, this charge keeps it, for lack of a better word, erected the whole time. And it's just as strong as a regular katana to a degree, because if we roll a critical fail, that's it for the sword. If you trigger the trigger a second time, it will reverse the polarity and pull all the segments back into the handle. So
now, is this something that's just a made-up thing, or do they really have things like this? Because it sounds like it's like a collapsible baton, but with a sword, and it's like it pops out like a stiletto. It pops in, pops out.
Well, I created this for a story I was writing when you and I lived together in like 91.
Yeah,
so that's how long I've had that as a thing.
I didn't know if technology today has something that's like that.
I would love to have one. I mean, but I don't know the integrity of something like that, how strong it really could be, or how heavy it would be to maintain that kind of a charge. So who knows? But one of the things I wanted to say is when you guys went into that green box, telling you had a choice between 2 drawers that you could only go for towards the end. The one drawer you didn't get had 2 Ingram Mac 10s with extra magazines. So
I don't feel so bad about losing those. The Ghost Killer blade I'm still curious about. the shotgun was good with the dragon's breath, and then those bullets that had the blood on them. I'm thinking those may be helpful against the lycanthrope kind. You know,
The fuck? They're not
Oh.
silver.
You can't
Weren't
do
they?
that to my each.
weren't they silver?
I would have. Did you not
Wait a
take
minute.
notes?
I
You got to take
got it.
notes.
Here,
I took
give
the
them to me,
notes.
Tone. I'll check them out.
Send him over.
Well, once you guys when you guys eventually found yourselves at the wharf, which was a dock where Eugene had a houseboat moored at. Trying to find my things here.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I thought you were waiting for us to say something. I'm like, you didn't
No.
finish your thought.
Well, I'm gonna cut. I'll just cut this out. Okay. Odesso and Each, you guys eventually headed to the wharf, which was a tributary off the Potomac River where Eugene's houseboat was moored. And you made your way aboard this boat. You found hanging on the wall strange paintings that made your skin crawl. In fact, it was very reminiscent of something you had seen back at the Rockefeller Plaza where they held that auction. You made your way to the lower level where a closed door on the fore side of the cabin was all that stood between you and the unknown. Each you'd called out were the FBI. You saw the handle turn and the door open as we cut back to Coldwell, Barker, Baker, and Arello walking into Darius's apartment. And you saw wood and wicker and all this wild jungle-esque weird-ass bayou shit all through this whole thing. Finding your way towards the back room where you found a log in the middle of this room with 7 severed heads with candles illuminated in all the sockets and in the mouth and stuff. And then you saw Darius, Grizzly, and Half Tank coming out of the dark. And he started having a monologue, well, not a monologue, but a dialogue with you. In which case you started having one back with him. And then at that time, he flipped up the eye patch and showed you that he had that sigil on his glass eye, causing Arello to go insane and run out the door and down the stairwell past Rice, who was down there all cracked out on the lower landing. And then that's when all hell broke loose upstairs, and the gunfight ensued, and then Rice came up as well, and you guys started going at it. Eventually, you guys were victorious in this, and you grabbed his eye. You took his eye with you.
Yeah. Luckily, you had me sweating all week whether I knew if Coldwell was going to live or not, because he left me on such a cliffhanger. I'm like, geez, I'm outnumbered. I'm outgunned. Coldwell's done. My partner's a floor below, the only one that I actually really trust, and he's all jacked up. I was all like, this is the end for Coldwell.
Yeah, he
Turning
was
tricks for crack money.
he was pretty tore up. He was definitely in shambles. I think that's when I had to make a roll where it was starting to wear off of him, though.
Yeah.
But back on the boat, titled The Muse, Eugene came out of the restroom. And he was like a nerdy-looking man. He had greasy hair that was combed out to the sides, spectacles. He had a white
Henry
shirt.
Swanson from Big Trouble. Henry
Yeah.
Swanson. the
Henry
name.
Swanson, yeah. That's kind of what I was fashioning him sort of to look like. And then he started his dialogue with both of you. Tone, you told him to sit down. And at one point, I think he stood up to talk to Each, to tell him about the pain that he knew Each felt. You told him to sit down, and then he put his arm on Each's shoulder.
You tried to.
And you put him down.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yep.
And then as you're looking at him, smoldering with this hellfire round in midsection, you saw the back of his shirt tear, and you saw this flat millipede-looking insect that was about 18 inches long with these 6 legs and this tail rise up off of his back and actually leaped at you, Adesso. You used your shotgun to kind of block it across your chest.
Yeah,
and
your
it's
armor.
it still dug into you though. So it was still trying to get into you, lay an egg, and you guys were just doing battle with this thing. But I want to talk about how you guys felt when you saw this thing finally.
I thought it was pretty tame compared to what we've seen in this game. It's like, oh, it's an 18-inch fucking nasty, scary bug. Yeah, we got this. It's not a purple grapefruit-sized globe of protoplasm, or a giant flying thing ripping the roofs off of Camaros like we've seen.
It may have seemed tame, but because it was attached to Adesso, it was doing physical damage as well as strength damage simultaneously.
And I was afraid to attack because one, the blade was untested, and 2, the guy was wrapped up on Adesso, or the thing was wrapped up on Adesso. I didn't know what I could do. That's why I was like trying to grab it and like grab the tail, because that thing was going to plumb his cornucopia and plant a bunch of Fruit of the Loom little eggs in there. So we took the tail off, luckily.
Yeah, and every attack you did to its backside took 1 point off because of the armored carapace that was shrouding it. It was his underbelly that was soft. Eventually, you guys were successful, but at the expense of Adesso falling down. And when you took him out, the harbor master came out, gave him first aid enough to kind of, whatever he did, mouth the egg sac.
Egg hole.
But you notice he had a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And he was the one that had contacted TEA Dalton and the rest of his men. They put you in the car. He got the counterfeiting plates from you that you had taken off the boat before it went below the waterline. And he took you guys to the hospital. And you had that one-on-one with him each.
Yeah.
And I think that he felt kind of defeated, not in the fact that he had to give back the plates, but I think it was more that he was in over his head. That he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know the premise behind the bills. He did know that there was something to do with them, but his mind had blanked out. It was like trauma. He didn't know that you had saved him, what you had saved him from.
Yeah, I mean, let alone saving him from a suicide attempt, but then, he was definitely just in over his head. Yeah,
I could spend this now.
Ryder's holding up a folded bill right now.
The folded tin.
But yeah, it's that was a really fun conversation, because there's points in the character development, like Ichi always tries to play it off calm and very reserved, but there's points like when I was talking with Dalton, or in the previous the Under a Pale Moon, talking with the deputy guy, it's like saying there are things that you don't know about. Yes, there are monsters about, like things like that, like lifting the veil a little bit and telling them. And that kind of, maybe it's risky to open up like that. Well, most of the time the person dies, so it's no big deal, but Dalton's still around, and he kind of knows a little something, which maybe could get us in trouble. Ichi taking Adesso to the hospital was a big breach of protocol.
Yeah.
I was supposed to leave him there on fire.
On the boat, yeah.
Yeah. And, I had a choice between taking one of the last remaining pictures of Eugene the Wise or Adesso, and, well, I rolled high, and so I took Adesso.
Failed the roll, grabbed Adesso.
But yeah, it's like, I'm not going to just leave him. If he was like dead, decapitated, sure, I can understand that.
You could take the head in the painting then.
Yeah, that's right. I
Just,
could do that.
Yeah, you could take both. Yeah. Just roll it up, put it in his mouth.
Yeah, there we go. Put it behind his ear.
No.
What would have happened if the egg had been laid?
It would have gestated. Like it would have been barbed like a monkey ball.
It would have just aided what? Sorry. His butt.
Would that have been something we could have gotten out or not gotten out?
That would have been something probably for the epilogue.
Yeah. Oh, the bullets, they were 9mm bullets with sigils on them.
Sigils.
Sigils, thank you. Sigils.
Thank you. One of the things I want to say is that dialogue that you and I had, Sam, when I was doing the edit of that episode, it was like 20 minutes long, 15, 20 minutes long. It was really long. And I remember that it took me a while to get through it because I was trying to shorten the episode, but there was so much good stuff that I didn't cut a lot of it out. I would shorten up any pauses that we had or something that didn't need to be there. That may have been repetitious, but for the most part, it's there in its integrity. And I was thinking, I really like it when you guys have these conversations, like when you had it with the Ranger under a pale moon, or when Tone goes off and he's starting to have a rapport with somebody, or Junior does something, or when Chris is doing something, because I could just put the notes down, and we start adding new layers to the story that may not have been there before, or a certain depth to a character that may have only had a few sentences of what he was. And then you start finding out he's young, he's recently married, he's got a brand new kid on the way, and
he's fucked.
Yeah. At this point, he has these pie in the sky ideologies of what a forest ranger should be, and that he's going to hold the line, but he's never seen something like this. And he hasn't been on the job as long as Muha's been on the job.
This from Pale Moon listeners.
Yeah. So you start adding a depth to these characters, just like when you were dealing with Dalton. He was originally designed to be your go-to guy. It wasn't going to be Ramsey. You were right that was the person you were probably going to get with. But as things started to unfold at the medical examiner's office, and he started looking at the dollar bills, and then he got the text. First he got the text, and then he went over, and then he started looking at the bills, and that's what really started messing with him. And then he just started going insane from there. I'm like, okay, this adds a new layer to this part of it. And then we just killed the doctor. And then at the end, you start seeing that Dalton is confused. He's not sure which way to go. He's not sure what to believe in. I mean, these are all layers that you were bringing out in a character that was just a TEA agent, and he could or could not be helpful. That's all it said.
Yeah. Well, so TEA Dalton is not the best. If you want the best, you got a TEA Wade Garrett. Little roadhouse for you people. Isn't that his name, Wade Garrett?
Yeah, I think it is.
Well, like how Sammy was saying, like he adds personality into his character. You allow that when we start adding the layers and stuff. And even on one of these episodes with investigating the dead hookers, Coldwell shared an experience of what he deals with on a regular basis to Omega, where he's seen it, and that kind of struck him in that way. So that allowed a little more of his character to kind of leak through. Like he sees this kind of stuff on a normal basis, but not to the extreme of what he has to deal with Delta Green, with like all the I'm forgetting the word here.
Nuances.
And the nuances and supernatural occurrences that we see as well. And since Coldwell doesn't see Omega as frequently, we haven't worked with each other for a while, the way he's acted through, deciding, hey, I need to take an upper, it's like, wow, like what has this guy been through that, Coldwell himself doesn't know, like that he's resorting to something like that.
We've all rode the white dragon, my friends.
Now, I can't answer for Chris, obviously, because it's his character, but I think that he doesn't want to let anybody down. Like, Rice doesn't want to let his team down. And so he's trying to maintain at a red line position the whole time. And when he starts dipping because of exhaustion, he knows that he needs to keep performing. I think that's why he went for the pill, try to bump himself up. So he just didn't want to not be capable, in my opinion. So as an outsider that looked at that, that's probably what I would have thought. So I'm going to get a little into Eugene Abernathy really quick before we wrap this up, because this didn't have an opportunity to come out because his conversation and life was cut unexpectedly short. So Eugene Abernathy, he was a scientist that worked for Quantum Horizons, and he is not an artist. The art was originally created in a lab by a parasite attached to a monkey. Later on, it was attached to Eugene, who was sent out to DC to find sevens, even at the expense of the lives of twos. Now, sevens are killers. Twos are weak-minded people that have a tendency to kill themselves, and these numerical values that are placed on people are actually they exist in the world. You can look them up online. And I wanted to kind of play with these numbers, like the astrology numbers and whatnot, because the parasite's whole purpose is to find sevens that others like it can use as hosts. And only sevens can manage to survive with the parasite attached to it. And twos, well, they're just collateral damage while finding sevens.
Nice. Hey, so was Darius
A seven.
Again, she was saying he was a 7. Were they
Yeah.
scouting potential hosts for other of these things then?
Yes.
Maybe. No.
Yes, that was.
Dude,
what-
I can't imagine him
what-
with one of those things.
That was what. Well, the thing is like Darius. He was down on his luck big time. He had left Louisiana, found his way here. Well, I say here, but found his way to DC, and basically just done when Eugene found him. And he's like, hey, I would like to impart some wisdom. I want to buy your time from you. And I think he even said that he wanted to buy his time. And he gave him 10 $10 bills. And he started explaining stuff, and then he gave him this link. And then so Darius went home, and he turned on the link, and he started folding these bills till he got to 7, and then like his whole life just changed after that. So, and he was,
What would have happened if Adesso didn't shoot Abernathy?
well, that's, any time that we role play something, it's fluid for the moment. Like I go off of what you guys do. Had Adesso let Abernathy talk to each, he probably would have played up on him being in pain. He could sense the pain of his family, and he could give him release from that pain in a sense.
Well, he was reaching out to touch him.
Yes.
If he
was
had
reaching out to
succeeded
touch-
in touching him, what would have happened?
well, he just
Probably
would have
would've lost
touched
a
him.
hand.
Yeah.
Probably would
Well,
have lost a hand.
probably.
Because that would have tested that blade out right there.
But there's also see, the thing is that the parasite is not going to jump from host to host.
Right.
It's serving a purpose, and so it doesn't do that. It's not like, oh, I'm going to leave Eugene and jump on each. No, you kill the host, and it has to do that. Like, there's a whole list of things that this parasite is capable of doing. I mean, it can do the latch and drain, which is what it was doing. It has immortality. It never grows old. It doesn't starve to death. It doesn't perish through natural causes. It's got plenty of attacks, whether it's bone claws or biting, or the ability to deposit 1d4 eggs on a 20% chance.
Is that through a stab, or does it go through an orifice? Like, does it lay the eggs in the butt?
No, it could pierce the skin with this thing.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to go through the anus or something.
The way
like
it was
that.
It is, yeah, intended.
That's what I thought was going on with Adesso, the way it was laid out. I'm like, oh shit.
I didn't know how I wanted to do that, and I didn't want to go so deep like that. No pun
the tip?
intended.
No consent.
Tip of the tail.
Just the tip of the tail. But yeah, it was designed specifically for this. Like, I created it to do these things because I wanted it to be a threat to the two of you guys when you had to deal with it. Like, I knew that you guys were probably going to burn down Eugene. I knew Tone was going to do that. There was no doubt in my mind. Especially when he got the Hellfire stuff and he got on board that boat, I'm like,
I'm surprised I wasn't shot.
yeah.
Hey, let me test this out each.
I thought to myself, as soon as Tone sees this dude, he's going to maybe let him say good morning and smoke him down before he finishes the word "good." That's it.
Good morning. Wrong. It's the afternoon.
And I used to do that with our old D&D campaigns because Tone would just log jam the big bad villain. So I had to have a secondary villain. Remember, I'd always start putting in a secondary because of Tone.
Thanks, Tone.
So I knew that when this thing had popped up, it would probably get pretty, the mortality rate would increase. And it did. I mean, Tone went down. It, took him out. Same thing with Darius and his boys. I was like, he's going to take somebody out. I actually thought that Rice would have made it to the room. I didn't know he was going to start gacking out 2 episodes prior, and that
Good burn.
that made things a little challenging because he didn't go up to the room. Not that I'm looking forward to smoking anybody, but I wanted him to be there to lend you support. That's why Aurello went up there with you too, because there needed to be more people in the room to offset the 3 people that were on the other side of the heads. Because I knew that once that eye patch got lifted, it was going to go crazy. I mean, this guy and his boys just went through 7 people 1 floor down. They don't
And if
care.
I would have failed that sanity check, I have no clue what would have happened.
Didn't you? Who failed the sanity check? Oh, Baker did.
Baker did.
Yeah, because
And,
exactly what he did. He put the gun to his head, remember? And you ended up getting the gun away from him. That was what would have happened.
But the other agent that was in there, he ended up running out the building because he failed.
Yeah,
That's
but he
how-
didn't have his weapon out, though.
Oh, okay.
So he fled, probably with a puddle of piss marking his trail. So
And that's how Omega found me.
Yeah, he followed the trail. He followed the yellow
trail.
brick piss.
But, everybody reconvening back at the hospital. Odesso slightly coming out of it. And then the doctor's like, no, man, I need some more information. What you're telling me isn't good enough. And that's when Ramsey came up and said, no, Doc, these guys are with me. Obviously this man has some clout in this city. And that was what led on to what goes on from here.
Here you go, Doc. Here's a $10 bill. Keep the change.
Yeah, but basically, we peeled back Collateral Damage, and everybody got to kind of see how the sausage was made once again.
Dude, imagine if these creatures, because I like doing artwork and all that. There's always this idea of having like an artist colony where there's artists there creating all day and all this. And imagine that colony, but each one of those things is attached to an artist, and each one of those artists is painting and creating and sculpting just these totally horrific and scary things, like giving people pieces of artwork with these symbols attached, and that could just be such a cool, creepy setting,
Now, I don't think I
H.P.
mentioned it.
Lovecraft kind of thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not from this dimension. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but that parasite's not from this dimension.
No, I'm sure they're cosmic Cthulhu horror shit.
Yeah, what would be cool is to have all these artists draw these large paintings and stuff and have them on display, but as each artist has them, it puts together like a mural, and that is the...
It's like a mosaic.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
cool.
thing. Or even, put together a mosaic of something like in a church or something like that. When people go in to worship, they just, another 20 people just, off themselves while attending mass at whatever. It's like, what?
Mass suicide.
Yeah. Have to save that one. Put that in my pocket.
Put that in the vault.
Delete that. Well, does anybody else have any other questions or any other what we're going to do next? I know what we're going to do next. I already explained this.
What did Heisenberg end up doing with all the stuff that we collected? Because we gathered everything, right? Like Coldwell still had the eyeball. You guys had the
Well, the
plate.
thing is that you meaning Coldwell and Rice, have disappeared. You guys went in different directions. You still have the eyeball. And I think that was really the only thing that was going on that end of it. He encountered the other two agents at the airport and got the plates. So you still have this eyeball in your possession.
Why didn't you turn in the eyeball?
Because we were on the run. We blew up the building and had to dip out.
Well, you made it back to the hospital, but then at that point, everybody kind of went their ways. Like everybody had to get on their own planes and do their thing.
Ooh.
But he didn't know anything about the eyeball. Like he didn't know what you guys were doing.
Didn't
And
we
for-
talk about the painting the bills and all that when we all met up?
Yeah, but he only wanted the plates. That was the whole thing. Was to
Oh,
find
I
out
got
what was
magical
going on,
eyeball.
to secure the bills, secure the plates.
Oh, he didn't know about the eyeball at all.
Yeah.
So
He
he
didn't
didn't
know,
need to
yeah.
collect it.
Yeah, he didn't know about the eyeball. So
And Coldwell didn't feel like informing him about it.
I mean, that could be
say.
something that, we could use on one of your own stories off to the side, where you're coming across all these drug runners and stuff like that, and drug dealers who are found like dead, and they just basically, you find their bodies and stuff, and they're like, man, you're really starting to rack up this count. What's going on? And you actually just going up to people and showing them the eye, and then they just off themselves,
Strong opening night on date night,
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, and you start making a name for yourself as you start working your way up, as having all these arrests and whatnot. These people are just goobered up in the brain at that point. So, I mean, can you
Right.
imagine if somebody saw that and they didn't have a gun and they wanted to kill themselves? I mean, they'd be like scratching their eyes out and trying to bite their own wrists and stuff.
They just want 5150. I don't know, man. I was
Yeah.
just there.
Yeah. It would be interesting.
All right, well, if anybody doesn't have anything else to say, I do want to say this one final thing for our next, what we're going to be doing next. Deep Waters Disavowed, because Tone and Sam want to go through it. So
Yeah.
Ooh.
Did you already explain what disavowed is?
Disavowed is an AP, a scenario that does not fit into the canon storyline of what we've already ran. It's just one of those what if knockoffs. So
Yeah. It's
They'll
basically,
go-
we're running a module that the agents had already run, but we weren't involved on it and only listened to it once 2 years ago. So we're going to go through it now and see what we can fuck up.
And ironically, I've actually gone through and started rewriting some of that to modify some things and make it a little more clear, a little more nice. Because I think originally it was only 3 pages long. So,
Oh,
Shit,
cool.
usually that's your intro.
yeah. First page, bye, Brian. All right.
Yeah. Bye, brain. Well, excellent,
All right.
boys.
Well, that's a good night.
All
Everybody
right.
say good night.
Good
See you
Nice.
next season.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And what's next season, Ryder? The Deep Waters, right?
No, next season. Hang on a second.
Close out
Next
his windows.
season will be our basic fantasy RPG.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that's coming out.
Yes, it is. I actually been talking with the creator, Chris Gonerman, and we'll see what we can do on that end. I'm looking forward to it, though. We will be running a homebrew scenario called the Blood Vault. So I'm looking forward to that, though. Yeah, what we do with Deep Waters is a little side thing that we'll drop in, though. So
Blood Vault, baby!
all right, so,
That's where we got to end. No one
Yeah.
topping that.
next season.